What is the best related advice your parents ever told you? My parents didn't want to have the talk with me, so they had our family friend do it. He said, and I quote, "Your body is going through a lot of changes and you're going to get urges to do some weird. It's all normal. Unless you are like rubbing dead puppies on your body, then come see us for help." Honestly, I don't think that having a talk or the talk is the best idea anyways. My wife and I have raised a pretty amazing young man, and we've never had the talk. We've simply never been afraid of the topic and have never avoided it while being proactive here and there as well. So over the years it's been a subject that comes up, and we discuss it just like any other topic. I feel that this is a much better idea than building up to a huge moment for the talk. Doing this just makes it a huge deal that will embarrass you and your child. Teaching them that is shameful, even if that is not your intention. Besides, how can you cover everything in a meaningful way with only one talk? When my dad caught 13-year-old me with a Playboy, I was terrified, but he said not to worry, it was normal to be curious. Then he said the wisest thing, just remember, most women do not look like that. I just asked my kiddo if he has seen any. Then I just informed him that it's not realistic. That is not how it goes in real life as 18-year-old. Then told him when he is ready, I'll leave the house for 30 seconds so he can have privacy while doing it for the first time. Haha, I made a joke with him and then informed him that it can be fast the very first time and that's normal. That I would give him a few hours to have the whole house. Explained foreplay. Said I would love candles and condoms, and they could just have a safe place to experience it all. My dad held up my baby bro and told me that if I wasn't careful this is what would happen. For that, I need to tell my son to look in the mirror. Then again, he knows we were just together for 3 months. He also knows that we're still extremely happy together 20 years later and that he wasn't an accident but a surprise. Not my parents, but awkwardly and unexpectedly, my family doctor, teenage boys and even early 20-something men are horny, barely know what they're doing, and barely remember to wash their balls. Don't even let them touch you unless they show through their actions that they genuinely respect you, see, and like you as much as you like them. And even then always use a condom no matter if you're on other birth control because babies aren't the only thing you can pick up from. And never get with a guy who's hounding you for it. Pretty sure this is what happened to my old co-worker's teenage daughter. Her daughter got a boyfriend in high school and my co-worker just didn't like him. I don't think it had anything to do with him dating her little girl. She just really didn't like the guy, would just refer to him at work as the boy. More info I got. I get it. Her daughter dotes on him, will do anything he wants, and he just kind of ignores her till he feels like giving her a bit of attention. He dumped her at one point, I have a feeling because she wouldn't sleep with him, then they got back together, and bam, teenage pregnancy. He didn't get even remotely better after she got pregnant. He made her late to ultrasound appointments on more than one occasion. She really wanted him to be there. They'd get to his house and he would make them wait 20-30 more minutes before he grudgingly came out. No idea how they are doing now. When I left that workplace, her daughter would spend 1 week living with her with the toddler and 1 week living with her boyfriend's family with the baby. They were 19 and neither of them had jobs. My dad gave me a talk when I was in my teens that pretty explicit about how a woman's body needs attention and time to be ready for. He also gave me a book called The Guide to Getting It On and suggested I read it and he'd answer any questions. By the time I was having, I felt very confident about how it worked and how to make women feel good. I've tried to keep building up my S's and knowledge over the years, different courses and books. Partners have always been complimentary. I can thank dear old dad for that. A gentleman never tells. I've always lived by this as well, but recently found out that while a gentleman never tells, ladies are telling every minor detail. Which makes me upset because to me it is a respect thing, like not sharing pictures, that somehow we can't expect women to conform to. Seems ist and duplicitous. We don't get to pick and choose what consent applies to. It applies consistently to everything. If you have your partner's consent, go for it. If you don't, it is a betrayal of trust and is not okay. My mom is great, but it's absolutely never worth compromising on your values or your self-respect. Directly followed up with, walk away from any guy who tries to pressure or intimidate you into doing stuff with him. Don't waste time with guys who think they're entitled to your body. Don't fall for shallow flattery and be manipulated. Just walk. You are not missing out on anything. As kids, my mom always taught me and my siblings about being compassionate and kind to other people, as well as being responsible and honest and respectful. All those things parents try get into their kids' heads to help them turn out right. I was 14-15 when my mom sat me down and impressed on me that not everyone in the world has good-hearted and respectful intentions, and that I need to keep this especially in mind when it comes to how people act when romance and come into the picture. It was a new layer to the lessons she gave me growing up, and I took it to heart. It's advice that has served me very well. My mom, you know what people who practice the pull-out method are called? Parents. In all seriousness though, my mom answered any questions I had and even helped me get a doctor's appointment arranged when I decided I wanted to be on the pill. I'm eternally grateful that she made it easy to go to her for any questions or advice. I was almost exclusively interested in women as a woman for my late teen years, so a lot of the time my mom's advice and open conversation seemed irrelevant to me, but it meant so much to me that she had such an open conversation with me about and questions that didn't seem important until I started dating a man and told her, hey, I'm gonna sleep with a guy, let's talk birth control, and she immediately booked me an UD installation. Open, comfortable conversation with mom is so important. It really sets the tone. If my mom hadn't been pro and talk, it'd definitely be a whole mom by now. When I first started dating my now wife, my parents gave me a box of condoms and basically said, we know you're going to have, so just be careful. We had already been sleeping together for about a month, but hey, free condoms. Reminds me of my dad. After helping me move into the dorms as a freshman, he gave me a gift of a Costco-sized box of condoms and a similarly gigantic bottle of vitamins. It's the thought that counts, but it is still an awkward AF thought in the first place. If you up, we're here for you and we've got money. But if you hurt a girl, you're out of the house and on your own. To be honest, I don't know if my parents would have been mad if I knocked a girl up in high school or college. They had the time and resources to basically fund another baby from birth through college, and they were old parents when I was born, so it probably would have been their only shot at being fun young grandparents. Either way, having that support system and safety net did wonders for my peace of mind. My parents said the same, more or less. Not we have the money, but you're too young to handle the situation on your own. It certainly had fiscal undertones. Working part-time at the grocery store after school wasn't going to pay for a baby. But also, I was a kid. Proper adult guidance would have been warranted. The second part was the same. I'll tell the same to my son. Is about making another person feel good. If all you want is a nut, then jerk off instead. But don't make it all about the other person. It's like making dinner for someone and sitting in front of them with an empty plate. They won't be able to enjoy it as much with you staring at them and making them eat alone. Take what you need and give them what they need in return. My dad gave me 2 prices of solid gold advice. Wear a condom. It could save your life. If you get pregnant, that can be taken care of. If you get AIDS, we lose you. I was telling him I'd been raped but giving a lot of excuses. He was drunk. He knew I liked him, etc. He cut me off and just said, did they ask first? No, then that's rape. I know it's not exactly the same topic, but it has always bothered me that in general shows situations that are obviously rape, but embellishes it with attractive bodies, attraction after assault. Same with incest. Not at all, but too much, and I haven't been able to understand very well why that happens. Give me a healthy relationship any day, I'm going to smile more. My mom is super Catholic, so this one really caught me off guard, but essentially she told me, there are people who are so lonely in this world they will have a kid for some companionship and may lie about being on birth control. My ex lied after I told her I didn't want kids. A few years later, we divorced and we were each sharing custody. Each of us would take them for a week, and she called, said she couldn't do it anymore, and gave me full custody. She thought she wanted kids, but I guess not once it came down to taking care of them. My grandpa sat me down when I was 16 and told me that I need to find a girl that loves to eat. When I asked him why, he said, well, if she loves to eat, she'll likely also love all the other finer things in life, like art and music, and she'll be a fantastic lover. He was right on the money. My fiancé and I love to appreciate good food and the other finer things. Thanks, Grandpa. My parents never talked to me about or even masturbation. My mom used to catch me in the act a couple times and was always highly uncomfortable. They just gave me the feeling that I was doing something very wrong and shameful. Never even taught me about tampons, because that's what whores use. I first had at 17 with a boy I was dating for a year, and my birth giver lost her mind. Called me every name under the sun, took away my after-school privileges, my car, gave herself a right to check my phone every night for TS, etc. I didn't know how to masturbate until I was like in my mid-20s. Meanwhile, I can hear her and whatever boyfriend she had over going at it at all hours of the night and made me clean her dirty sheets. As a teen girl, I was constantly dying of embarrassment because my parents were really positive and answered questions accurately. My friends would always worm their way into the kitchen to ask my mom about related pleasure, her specialty. My dad was Mr. Contraceptive. We literally had vases full of various types, brands of condoms. My dad still knows more about birth control than I ever will. The one thing that stuck, she always said every guy I took to bed would need to be taught how to get me off. So I better get really good at communicating. And the best reason to dump a guy was when he wasn't receptive to learning new things in bed. I'm not sure how it even happened, but I have become the positive parent of teenagers and all their friends. My husband is still slightly mortified that I will discuss with anyone, but he's supportive. Our daughter is hideously embarrassed, so I'm banking on her carrying on the family legacy. Our son just rolls with it, nothing phases him. I could and should write a book about just how misinformed teens of overtly religious people are. Y'all would never believe the crazy if these kids come to with. Asked my mom, where do babies come from? She pulled out a medical textbook and showed me all the illustrations from conception to birth. Did I mention I was only 4 years old? I did that with my kids, except it wasn't a medical textbook. But where did I come from? It did have explicit diagrams and descriptions in child-appropriate language, including of conception. Guess which page my 4-year-old spontaneously memorized and for the next year would describe to visiting relatives, librarians, shop assistants, and at one point some random old lady on a bus? I have more sympathy for the Victorians now. No regrets, but sympathy. The parents give their kids advice? News to me, goddamn! My parents were doctors. They talk was every possible way that activity could lead you or your partner being their client. Very damn handy, because if you live in a small country town, you very much don't want your partner chatting with one of your parents about the consequences of their with you. As for the actual advice which mattered, about building good relationships and identifying bad ones, sweet all. Should never be used as a reward or punishment. There will be times when one of you wants it more than the other, and that's okay. If you're exhausted after work but your partner wants to celebrate a kick-ass day, help them celebrate. In a healthy relationship, is used to bring you closer together. It will make a bad day better and a good day great. Be open to try new things, even multiple times. You'll never know what you enjoy and never be anything but understanding and open-minded when your partner shares one of their kinks with you. That's some real good advice I want to give my kids when I am a father. Thank you for sharing. My mom was a living legend. She wasn't afraid to talk to me about anything, and I always felt comfortable going to her about this stuff. We'd even laugh about Yule things together. She died 2 years ago now. I hope she's partying up there. As for my dad, useless piece of dog. Didn't get no help from him. My mom was fantastic and supported me so much. The pill was good and bad. It ed when I had been on it for years and it started to affect my libido. And if only I had the copper you'd put in years ago. But hey, at least I was protected and at least it was good. For most of the time I was taking it. Lots of other outside sources to affect my libido too at that time. But all I can say is there was a huge difference coming off. To be honest, I think it was just contraceptive advice and boy advice really, and the lovely laughs we used to have about it all. I can tell you the worst advice I got from my mom. The sum total of her talk was, once you're no longer a virgin, you'll be used goods and no one will want you. It's not surprising that neither my sister nor I told her when we were wally assaulted and both of us became very self-destructive for a while. Telling teenage girls that their value is based on their virginity is bull. You are worth so much more than just your body or someone's ed-up idea about who has touched it. I have worked hard to make sure that my kids, my friends, and my siblings that if they have a problem or they are scared, they can trust me. They're conservative Christians, so it was just don't do it. It's a sin. Guess what? Didn't work. My parents were too. They told me it was flipping awesome. Just don't let it ruin your life. Don't have with someone if you're not sure it's someone that you'd want to have an unplanned baby with. Because contraception that you should always use when you're not planning for a kid isn't 100% effective. They didn't care so much about premarital. They just advised me to practice some level of exclusivity. I still think it was great advice to follow. So much less drama. Not entirely related, but I had a boyfriend and my dad picked me up from the donut shop, usual pickup spot, and he saw me sitting at a table with his friend's son, who I had zero interest in dating, but was my dad's friend's kid, so I felt obligated to be nice to despite him constantly staring at me at school. I got in the car and my dad said only have one boyfriend before the door even closed. It's not really advice, but a precaution that allows privacy. My mom is very positive and makes sure my brother and I are heavily educated on that stuff. So she has a stash of condoms, lubricant, pregnancy tests, and Plan B pills. She never checks if any of them are used, only restocks them if they get sort of old. It gives me a sense of safety and privacy when it comes to that stuff, because as a teenager, being open about lives with parents isn't the most comfortable thing ever. When was growing up, my dad ended the talk with putting a box of condoms on my dresser and said if you're going to use these, then put a pregnancy test beside it and said don't use this. He then said if you need more of these condoms, put the empty box on my dresses and it'll get you more. It seemed like a good way to finish it off. When he said not to use the pregnancy test, I understood that it was a I hope you don't have to use this. He was very open and available for any questions I had regarding. I hope to provide my son the same support when the time comes. That it is always okay to say no, that I should not be pressured into it, either by friends or guys I dated. She told me that I could change my mind at any time and that the boy should then respect my wishes. But she also said that not all boys would do that, and therefore I should be careful who to trust and not be a tease, not in those words. When I eventually had, she came to me the day after and asked, "Did you guys have?" I confirmed, blushing. And 10 minutes later I had a box of condoms in my room. No fuss, no lectures. My mom was awesome that way. My dad gave me a book about written for children when I was about 12. Then, he asked me if I had any questions. I was very shy and embarrassed, an only girl who didn't have boyfriends and was pretty much scared of them. I said no, and that was the end of that. He and I never discussed it again. My mother said nothing. I never had a date in high school, and dating was sporadic in college. I rid myself of my virginity when I was 26 and grew to find out that I was very Yule and orgasmic with my second husband. I made sure to be open with my son, because I wanted him to know that is amazing. I think the best thing I told him was to make sure his partner is satisfied. That the will be better the more you love the person. Banging away at a stranger will never hold a candle to making love to someone you deeply trust and care about. 48 years later, and the best I ever had was with someone who at the time I loved deeply and they deeply loved me. Sure, other people were more est at some things and may have had more attractive attributes, but overall those things couldn't stack up against deep love and trust. My mom always told me that there's no need to wait until marriage to have, but emphasized that I should do it with someone I know well, love, and trust completely. Unfortunately, I lost my virginity in a stupid way and wish to God I had just held on a little longer, so my first time would have been with my husband. Not because I wanted to wait until marriage or anything, but I wish I could have lost my virginity to someone that I actually loved and trusted. So I will definitely give the same advice to my kids and share my regrets. No need to wait until marriage, but it is worth waiting until you find someone you genuinely have a trusting bond with. My parents never said a thing. One day I found a small book on my bed. The title was, "Where Do Babies Come From?" I was 12 or 13 years old. I think I kept laughing for about 2 months. We had a top-notch ed teacher. She was a nurse. No holds barred. The neighborhood parents were in shock. But we threw it all on their face when some statistics came out for our near-downtown Chicago school system, the statistic that gave us young teens and the nurse who taught all the classes some solid credibility, in DuPage County, the first ever 8th grade class, to have no unplanned births. I had pretty much not education from my parents on the subject, but I'll tell you what I told my son. If you like X during, if she likes Y during, that's great too. The trick is to find someone you can agree with about it so that it flows naturally. The problems start when you disagree on it. Neither is necessarily wrong, but it's an indicator of incompatibility. My parents never talked to me about or masturbation or anything actively. I kind of discovered it myself. We never had the birth control talk or the pull-out method talk or anything really. We still don't talk about it all. I feel like it's taboo amongst my parents to discuss. I have a very Yule mindset and physical touch is so important. It's my love language and it's just so funny how no one in my family talks about it. My mom and dad were going through most of their relationship was just going through, and she used to vent to me about it. One day she got on the topic of, mind you, I was probably 13. She says your dad is all about himself. Once he gets it's lights out and gone to bed. So I guess it wasn't direct advice but inadvertent advice to take care of your partner if you want a healthy life in a relationship. I've always held that moment close to me and it's actually paid off quite well. My dad pulled me aside one day for the talk. He sat me down and said the usual stuff, but then he ended the conversation with the following quote, if she's crazy, don't her. Never stick your into a crazy girl. She'll make you regret it for the rest of your life. However, if she's rich enough or hot enough, I'd say just forget what I said and tap that, but not too hard. You have to be a gentleman. There's a time and a place for being rough with a woman, and that time and place should only ever be in the bedroom. I bring it up to him every now and then in front of my mom, and he always denies saying that. When I turned 13 and went to high school, my parents told me to always be careful when I was with a girl alone. Unless I trusted her, they said to always try to be in public with her or have someone else in the room. Their reasoning was that girls are told to not be alone with guys, for fear of rape or sexual assault. They told me to not be alone with a girl in case the girl lies. This was back in 09 or so. Now I know that falsified sexual charges are much rarer than actual ones. But this has actually saved me twice. Once was just a drunk girl wanting to be alone with me, and my roommate from college happened to be outside the bathroom of where she ended up accusing me of some stuff happening. Nothing did, but she tried to tell a few of her friends it did. The other saved me when I worked in a hotel. I had an obviously drunk woman who was hiding in the hotel to avoid him, saying he had abused her. So we put her in a room that she paid for with cash, and she asked for me, since I checked her in, to walk her from her car to her room since she didn't feel safe being alone. In hindsight, I should have just had security do it, but they were focusing on a different event, so I took it on myself. Anyways, I got into the elevator with her and put my phone on record in my pocket. She opened herself up to me complaining about the guy and trying to hug me, and I managed to say, sorry ma'am, we're not allowed to hug guests. I left that night, glad I wouldn't be coming in again until after checkout for next day. When I came back in, they told me that her husband had come to the hotel and picked her up in the morning, and that she said I had checked her in and forced her to take me up to her room after checking her in. She didn't accuse me of anything more than that, but when I came to work, my manager, who had been there last night and saw it all, said she didn't believe that, and my recording helped me get out of that. So it doesn't help often, this advice, but when it does, it definitely does.